My true story from Georgia. They hid the wedding invitation and acted like it was lost. My dear ones, I'm writing this letter with trembling hands and a heart that's both broken and somehow strangely at peace. At 73 years old, I never thought I'd be sharing such a story. But sometimes the truth needs to be told, especially when it might help another soul who's walking a similar path of heartbreak and healing. My name is Eleanor May Patterson, and I've lived in this little Georgia town my whole life. The magnolia trees outside my window have watched me grow from a young bride to a grandmother, their white blooms marking the seasons of my life like faithful sentinels. For 67 years, I've called this place home, and for most of those years, I believed family was everything, the cornerstone of existence, the reason we wake up each morning, the legacy we leave behind. I raised 3 children in this house, my son Michael, my daughter Sarah, and my youngest, David. When they were small, this kitchen was always full of laughter, the smell of fresh biscuits rising in the oven, and the sound of little feet running through the halls like music. I taught them to fish in the creek behind our property, helped them with homework at this very table where I'm writing now, and kissed away their scraped knees more times than I can count. This house held birthday parties and Christmas mornings, first day of school pictures and graduation celebrations. Every corner holds a memory. Every room echoes with voices from decades past. My husband, Robert, used to say I was born to be a mother and grandmother. "Ellie, you've got enough love in that heart of yours to fill up the whole county," he'd tell me, watching me fuss over our children or tend to a neighbor's sick baby. He was right, I suppose. Love has always been my greatest gift, and as I'm learning now, sometimes my greatest weakness. But it was my granddaughter, Emma Rose, who truly stole my heart from the moment she entered this world. When Sarah brought her home from the hospital 25 years ago, I held that tiny bundle and whispered promises I meant to keep forever. "Grandma Ellie will always be here for you, sweet pea," I told her, and I meant every single word with the fierce devotion only a grandmother can understand. Emma was different from the other grandchildren. While my other grandchildren came and went during visits, Emma stayed. She'd spend every summer with me from the time she was 5 years old, learning to can peaches in the sweltering August heat, helping me tend the garden with her small hands getting dirty alongside mine, and listening to stories about her great-grandmother's recipes that had been passed down through generations of women in our family. We'd sit on the porch swing in the evenings, watching fireflies dance in the twilight like tiny stars, and she'd tell me about her dreams, her fears, her hopes for the future. "I want to be a teacher like you were, Grandma Ellie," she'd say, her head resting against my shoulder, her hair smelling of sunshine and childhood. "And when I get married, I want you to help me plan everything. You'll be my maid of honor, okay? We'll make it the most beautiful wedding anyone's ever seen." I'd laugh and tell her she'd probably change her mind 100 times before then, but secretly, I treasured those moments more than gold. They were my greatest joy, my reason for being, the light that made all of life's struggles worthwhile. As Emma grew older, our bond only deepened. She'd call me every Sunday without fail, sometimes twice a week, sharing her college adventures, her first job, her heartbreaks and triumphs. When she started dating James, she brought him to meet me first, before anyone else in the family, a gesture that meant the world to me. "What do you think, Grandma?" she asked nervously as we watched him help me fix a loose board on the porch steps. "He's not just trying to impress you, is he? I need to know if he's genuine." I watched that young man work with genuine care, asking thoughtful questions about the house's history, complimenting my grandmother's rose bushes, and I knew he was good for her. "He's got kind eyes, sweet pea, and he listens when you talk, really listens. That's rarer than you might think in this world." 3 years ago, when James proposed on a quiet Sunday afternoon in my very own garden, Emma called me before she even said yes. "Grandma Ellie, he's asking. What should I do?" she whispered into the phone, as if James couldn't hear her in the next room. "Follow your heart, darling. But if you're calling me, I think you already know the answer." She said yes, of course, and I was the first person she told. We spent hours that next weekend looking through bridal magazines, talking about venues, discussing whether she wanted a spring or fall wedding. I offered to help with whatever she needed, my savings, my time, my expertise from decades of helping with church functions and community events. I wouldn't dream of planning this without you, she assured me, squeezing my hand tight. You're going to be so involved, you'll probably get sick of me asking for advice. I want your opinion on everything, the dress, the flowers, the music, the food. This is our wedding, Grandma. Yours and mine. Those words filled my heart with such joy, I thought it might burst. Our wedding. Finally, after years of watching other grandmothers help plan their granddaughters' special days, it was my turn. The early months were everything I'd dreamed of. Emma would come over on weekends and we'd spread wedding magazines across my kitchen table, marking pages with little sticky notes. We talked about everything. Whether to have the ceremony in the church where I'd been married, or outside in the garden where she'd spent so many childhood summers. We discussed flowers, and I told her about the roses her great-grandmother had planted that still bloomed every spring. I want to carry some of those roses in my bouquet, she said one afternoon, her eyes bright with excitement. And maybe we could use some of great-great-grandmother's lace on my dress? I want to feel connected to all the women who came before me. I cried that day, happy tears that I tried to hide by busying myself with making sweet tea. This was what I'd always hoped for, to pass down not just recipes and stories, but traditions, connections, the invisible threads that bind families together across generations. We even started planning the engagement party. Emma wanted to have it at my house, in the backyard where she'd played as a child. Everyone will come, she said confidently. And you'll help me with the menu, right? Nobody makes deviled eggs like you do, Grandma. I threw myself into the planning with the energy of a woman half my age. I made lists, called caterers, researched florists. I felt useful, needed, important. This was my role, my purpose, to love and support and celebrate the people who mattered most. But as the months passed, something began to change. The weekly calls became bi-weekly, then monthly. When I asked about wedding plans, Emma's voice would get tight, rushed. Oh, we're still figuring things out, Grandma. Nothing's decided yet. You know how complicated these things can be. I told myself they were just busy. Young people have so much on their plates these days, careers, mortgages, social obligations. But deep in my heart, a small worry began to grow like a weed in my carefully tended garden. The first real sign something was wrong came during what should have been one of the happiest moments. Emma had promised to bring me dress shopping with her, to help her choose the perfect gown. We'd talked about it for months, planned which stores we'd visit, what styles might work best. When the day came, I dressed carefully in my best outfit, did my hair, and waited, and waited, and waited some more. Finally, my phone rang. It was Emma, and I could hear voices in the background, female voices, laughing and chatting. Grandma Ellie, I'm so sorry, but we had to change the appointment. Mom surprised me by bringing some of her friends along, and the boutique could only fit us in today. I know we planned to go together, but it's all right, darling, I said, trying to keep the disappointment out of my voice. These things happen. We'll reschedule, I promise. Maybe next weekend? But next weekend came and went without a word. So did the weekend after that. I began to notice other things. When I called Emma, she often seemed distracted, like she was multitasking. When I asked specific questions about the wedding, she'd give vague answers. We're still deciding, became her standard response to everything. The engagement party that we'd planned for my backyard? Suddenly, it was being held at a restaurant downtown. It's just more convenient, Grandma. You understand. I tried to understand. I really did. But each change, each cancellation, each vague response felt like a small rejection. I told myself I was being oversensitive, that weddings were stressful, and I shouldn't take things personally. The second major sign came 6 months ago when I ran into Emma's mother, my daughter Sarah, at the grocery store. I mentioned how excited I was about the wedding planning, about how Emma and I had been looking at centerpieces the week before. Sarah's face went pale as milk. Mom, you know how expensive weddings are these days, she said quickly, avoiding my eyes. They're trying to keep it small, intimate. You understand? Maybe you shouldn't get too involved in the planning. Shouldn't get too involved. The words hit me like a physical blow. This was my granddaughter, my Emma Rose, the little girl who'd promised I'd be her maid of honor. How could I be too involved in something I'd been invited to help plan? I'm just trying to help, I said softly. I know, Mom, but young people today, they have their own ideas about things, different from our generation. I nodded, but something in her tone made my stomach clench. Small didn't mean excluding grandmothers. Intimate didn't mean shutting out the people who loved you most. I'd helped plan intimate weddings before. They were often the most beautiful, the most meaningful. Over the next few months, I heard whispers through the family grapevine. My sister-in-law Rose mentioned that her daughter had been asked to be a bridesmaid. My neighbor Mrs. Henderson told me she'd heard the wedding was planned for October. But whenever I brought it up with Emma or Sarah, I got vague responses and quick subject changes. The third sign was perhaps the most painful. Emma had always spent Mother's Day with me, ever since she was a little girl. It was our tradition. We'd go to church together, then come back to my house for a special lunch. But this year, she called to cancel. I'm sorry, Grandma. James's family is having a big Mother's Day celebration, and I really should be there. You know how it is. I knew how it was. I was being replaced. Have you heard anything about the wedding date? I asked Michael when he stopped by to check on me one afternoon. My son had always been the most straightforward of my children, the one I could count on for honest answers. But even he couldn't meet my eyes. You know how it is, Mom. These things take time to plan. Everything's so expensive now. I could see the discomfort in his shoulders, the way he fidgeted with his keys like a guilty child. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and no one wanted to tell me what it was. That night, I called Emma. It went straight to voicemail. I called again the next day. Same thing. When she finally called me back 3 days later, her voice was distant, distracted. Sorry, Grandma. I've been so busy with work. How are you doing? I'm fine, sweet pea. How are the wedding plans coming along? Oh, you know, same old, still figuring things out. Do you need any help? I have some time. No, we're fine. James's mom has been helping a lot. She knows all the vendors in town. James's mom, not me, his mom. I hung up that night feeling more alone than I had since Robert died 5 years ago. Even then, I'd had my children, my grandchildren, my role in their lives. But now, it felt like I was being slowly erased from Emma's story. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago. I was at the post office, mailing a care package to my nephew in Atlanta, when Martha, the postmaster's wife, approached me with a concerned expression. Eleanor, honey, I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you feeling all right? You seem a little distant lately. I assured her I was fine, just tired. Well, I'm sure you're busy with wedding preparations, she said brightly. October 15th is coming up so fast. Are you excited? I bet you can't wait to see Emma in her dress. My daughter saw her at the bridal shop last month, and she said she looked absolutely radiant. My blood went cold. October 15th, 2 weeks away. And Emma had been at the bridal shop without me. Yes, I managed to say. Very excited. I remember when my granddaughter got married, I was so involved I practically planned the whole thing. It's such a special time for grandmothers, isn't it? I mumbled something about being very excited and rushed home with my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. That night I called Emma. For the first time in months, she didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. I tried Sarah, then Michael, then David. No one picked up. Their phones might as well have been disconnected. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the phone, and felt a loneliness so profound it took my breath away. The silence of the house pressed in around me like a physical weight, and I realized what I'd been refusing to see for months. They were planning a wedding without me. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I drove to Sarah's house unannounced. Her car was in the driveway, and I could see James's car there too. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding. No one answered. I knocked again, harder this time. I could hear voices inside, muffled, but definitely there. Sarah's voice, Emma's laugh, a man's voice that sounded like James. I tried the door, locked. I walked around to the back of the house, to the kitchen window. Through the sheer curtains, I could see them all sitting around Sarah's dining table. Emma was there, radiant in a way I hadn't seen in months. Sarah was showing her something in a large book, a photo album maybe, or a wedding planner. James was pointing at something on the page, and they were all laughing. They looked like a family, a complete family, and I wasn't part of it. I stood there in my daughter's backyard, watching my granddaughter plan her wedding without me, and felt every one of my 73 years. My knees ached, my heart pounded, and for the first time in decades, I felt truly old and forgotten. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with questions and hurt. How long had this been going on? How many meetings had there been without me? How many decisions had been made? How many moments of joy had I missed? That evening, Emma finally called. Her voice was bright, cheerful, as if nothing had happened. "Grandma Ellie, I'm so sorry I missed your call yesterday. I've been so busy with work and wedding preparations and—" "Emma," I interrupted gently, "when is your wedding?" The silence stretched so long, I thought she'd hung up. "Grandma?" "October 15th, I said. "It's October 15th, isn't it?" I heard her sharp intake of breath. "How did you—" "Why wasn't I told?" More silence. Then, in a voice so small I had to strain to hear it, "We sent you an invitation, Grandma. Weeks ago. Didn't you get it?" My heart stopped. "No, sweet pea. I didn't get any invitation." "Oh my God," she whispered. "It must have gotten lost in the mail. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I thought, when you didn't respond, I thought maybe you were upset with me about something." Lost in the mail. After 67 years in the same house, with the same mailbox, with Martha delivering my mail with the reliability of sunrise, my wedding invitation had gotten lost in the mail. But I knew better. I'd seen them at Sarah's house, planning without me. I'd felt the distance growing for months. I'd been slowly, systematically excluded from the most important event in my granddaughter's life. "I'll send another one right away," Emma was saying, her voice panicked now. "There's still time. You can still come. Of course you can still come. I'll pick you up myself." "That's all right, darling," I heard myself saying. "These things happen." "No, Grandma, I insist. I'll drive over tonight with a new invitation. Better yet, I'll pick you up myself on the day. You'll sit in the front row, right where you belong." Right where I belonged. The words cut deeper than she could have known. If I belonged there, why hadn't I been included from the beginning? The next few days were a blur of phone calls, each one more painful than the last. Emma called crying, insisting she'd drive over with a new invitation. She came by the house with a hastily printed card that looked nothing like the elegant invitations I'd helped her choose months ago. "I'm so sorry, Grandma," she kept saying. "I can't believe it got lost in the mail. I'm so sorry." But there was something in her eyes, a guilt that went deeper than a lost invitation. She knew I knew. Sarah called with elaborate explanations about postal service problems. "You know how unreliable mail can be these days, Mom. It's probably sitting in some processing center somewhere." Michael called with awkward apologies about communication mix-ups. "I should have checked with you, Mom. I assumed you'd gotten the invitation." David sent flowers with a note about how sorry he was for the misunderstanding. But I knew the truth. Somewhere along the way, I'd become the elderly relative they felt obligated to include, the one who might embarrass them or slow things down or remind people that life moves on and beauty fades. I'd become a burden rather than a blessing. The wedding was yesterday. I didn't go. I'd planned to. I'd even picked out a dress, a soft blue one that Emma had always said brought out my eyes, had my hair done at Betty's salon, and tried to summon the courage to face a room full of people who knew I'd been excluded and then hastily included at the last minute. But as I sat in my bedroom that morning, looking at myself in the mirror, I couldn't do it. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine, that my heart wasn't broken, that I didn't feel like a stranger in my own family's story. So I stayed home. I made myself a cup of tea, sat on my porch swing, and watched the October sun filter through the magnolia leaves. Emma called 3 times, but I didn't answer. I couldn't bear to hear her voice, couldn't bear to lie and say I wasn't feeling well or make some other excuse. I know because Martha mentioned it at church this morning, assuming I'd been there. "Oh, Eleanor, what a beautiful wedding." Emma looked absolutely radiant. And that dress. I heard her great-grandmother's lace was incorporated into the design. What a lovely touch. I smiled and nodded, letting her assume I'd been there. Yes, it was beautiful. "You must be so proud," she continued. "I saw the pictures on Facebook already. The whole family looks so happy. You raised such wonderful children and grandchildren." Martha squeezed my hand with tears in her eyes, and I realized she genuinely believed I'd been there, that I'd been part of it all. The thought that my absence hadn't even been noticed by some people was somehow both comforting and devastating. But here's what I've learned in these past 2 weeks of sitting alone in this house, wrestling with hurt and disappointment and a grief I didn't know how to name. Sometimes the people we love most are the ones who hurt us deepest, not because they're cruel, but because they're human. Flawed, complicated, selfish humans who make choices that seem easier in the moment. I think about Emma, about the pressure she must have felt. Maybe James's family had strong opinions about the wedding. Maybe my children convinced her I was too old, too set in my ways, too much of a complication for a modern wedding. Maybe she was caught between wanting to include me and wanting to keep the peace. But understanding doesn't make it hurt less. I could spend my remaining years nursing this wound, holding on to the betrayal, demanding explanations and apologies that might never come. I could make them feel guilty every Christmas, every birthday, every family gathering for the rest of my life. I could become the bitter old woman who never lets anyone forget how she was wronged. Or I could choose something else. 3 days ago, I called the Golden Years Senior Community across town. I'd driven past it for years, always thinking it was for people who had nowhere else to go, people who'd been abandoned by their families or had no one left who cared about them. But when I visited, I found something unexpected. A place full of people who had chosen to create new families, new traditions, new reasons to wake up each morning. "We have a book club," Dorothy, the activities director, told me as she showed me around the beautiful facility. "And a gardening group. Actually, we're looking for someone to help plan our holiday celebrations, someone with experience organizing events." I thought about all the church dinners I'd coordinated, all the birthday parties I'd thrown, all the Christmas mornings I'd orchestrated. Skills I'd thought were no longer needed or wanted. "I might be interested," I heard myself saying. Dorothy's face lit up. "Oh, that would be wonderful. We have so many residents who would benefit from someone with your experience. And honestly, we need someone who understands that just because we're older doesn't mean we don't want beautiful, meaningful celebrations." She showed me the activity room, the garden area, the small kitchenette where residents could cook if they wanted to. "Many of our residents still love to cook and bake," she explained. "We encourage it. In fact, we have a monthly potluck where everyone brings something they've made." I found myself thinking about my grandmother's recipes, the ones I'd always planned to pass down to Emma. Maybe they didn't have to die with me. Maybe there were other young people, staff members, volunteers, visiting grandchildren, who would appreciate learning to make real biscuits from scratch or how to can peaches the way my mother taught me. Yesterday, while my granddaughter married her young man in what I'm sure was a beautiful ceremony, I had dinner with 3 women who are about to become my new neighbors. Margaret, who taught high school English for 40 years and still runs a book club with the enthusiasm of someone half her age. Ruth, whose late husband was a war veteran and who volunteers at the VA hospital every week. And Helen, who raised 7 children and still gets visits from grandchildren and great-grandchildren every weekend. "The thing about living here," Helen told me over dessert, "is that you get to choose your family. Not everyone here has children or grandchildren who visit. Some do, some don't. But we all take care of each other." Ruth nodded. "I have one daughter who lives in California. She calls every week, visits twice a year. That's enough for me." "But Helen here, she's like the grandmother I never had. And Margaret keeps us all intellectually sharp with her book recommendations." Margaret laughed. "And Ruth keeps us grounded with her stories about real life. We're like 3 pieces of a puzzle that fit together perfectly." For the first time in months, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. The warm glow of belonging somewhere. "What about you, Eleanor?" Helen asked. "Tell us about your family." I could have told them about the wedding I'd missed, about the months of exclusion, about the granddaughter who'd broken my heart. Instead, I found myself talking about the good times, Emma's childhood summers, the laughter in my kitchen, the garden we'd planted together. "She sounds wonderful," Margaret said. "It must be hard to let them grow up and start their own lives." "It is," I agreed. But that's what we're supposed to do, isn't it? Love them enough to let them go, even when it hurts. This morning, I made a decision. I'm selling this house. This beautiful, memory-filled house that has become more of a mausoleum than a home. I'm moving to Golden Years, not because I'm giving up, but because I'm choosing to begin again. I've already called the realtor. She'll be here tomorrow to look at the house and give me an estimate. I know it will sell quickly. It's in a good neighborhood, and the garden alone is worth half the asking price. Robert and I put so much work into that garden over the years. I'll keep some things, of course. The porch swing, they have a lovely garden area at Golden Years where it will fit perfectly. My grandmother's china, the pieces I always planned to pass down to Emma. Maybe someday I'll find another young person who needs a grandmother, someone who will treasure Sunday dinners and canning lessons and stories about the old days. I'll keep my mother's jewelry, my father's books, the photo albums full of memories, but I'll let go of the rest, the furniture that's too big for my new apartment, the kitchen gadgets I no longer need, the rooms full of echoes. Because here's what I know now. Love doesn't always come from the people we expect. Sometimes it comes from strangers who become friends, from neighbors who become family, from new beginnings that look nothing like the endings we'd planned. Yesterday I got a call from Emma. I let it go to voicemail, but I listened to her message. "Grandma, I know you're upset with me. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. The wedding was beautiful, but it felt wrong without you there. I kept looking for you in the crowd, kept thinking about how you should have been there helping me get ready, fixing my hair the way you used to when I was little. I messed up, Grandma. I let other people influence me when I should have trusted my heart. Can we talk? Please?" I haven't called her back yet. I will, eventually. But not yet. I need to finish this chapter of my life first. Need to find my footing in this new world I'm creating. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even particularly sad. I'm 73 years old, and I'm starting over, and there's something magnificent about that. To Emma, if you ever read this, I love you. I always have, and I always will. Your wedding day was yours to plan, and I pray it was everything you dreamed it would be. I hope someday you'll understand that love isn't just about being included. It's about having the grace to step back when your presence isn't wanted, and the courage to build a new life when the old one no longer fits. To my children, I don't need apologies or explanations. I just need you to know that the door is always open, but I won't be waiting by it anymore. I'll be busy living, busy loving, busy creating new traditions with new people who value what I have to offer. And to anyone who finds themselves in a similar place, feeling forgotten or cast aside or too old to matter, you are not too old to start over. You are not too old to be loved. You are not too old to write a new story. The magnolia tree outside my window is bare now, but come spring, it will bloom again. And so will I. Tomorrow, I start packing. Next week, I move into my new apartment. And next month, I'll be helping plan the Golden Years holiday party, using all the skills I thought were no longer needed. Life is long, and it's full of unexpected chapters. This is mine. With love and hope for tomorrow, Eleanor May Patterson P.S. I've joined the Golden Years Drama Club. We're doing a production of Steel Magnolias next month, and I'm playing Weiser. Dorothy says I'm perfect for the role. Apparently I've got the sass for it. Who knew that at 73 I'd discover I'm an actress? Robert always said I had a flair for the dramatic. Maybe it's time to let that side of me shine. P.P.S. The book club is reading The Thursday Murder Club next month. I haven't read a mystery novel in years, but I'm looking forward to it. Margaret says it's about seniors who solve crimes together. Maybe there's hope for us old folks yet.